Hello, everyone. Uh, I, Kuldeep Sharma, welcome you all to today's session of daily news analysis, which is specifically due from the Hindu and the Indian newspaper. So, unlike yesterday's, we have very less news items for today because many news items which were covered in yesterday class have been repeated this time. So, let's start with the news item for today. The first news item is an economic news item which came on the front page of today's Hindu newspaper, which is regarding growth in the core sector output, which was recorded at 6.7% for the month of February. This data is not important, but it gives us an opportunity to read about index of industrial production, which is one of the index which help us to track the growth of industry month by month. Growth of industry tracking month by month is through the index of industrial production. So this index of industrial production tracks basically the manufacturing sector. So if you know, there are three sectors. One would be agriculture, one would be manufacturing, and one would be services. So it is actually dealing with the manufacturing sector. This IIP is actually compiled and published by an government organization known as National Statistic Organization, which is part of Ministry of Statistics. And it basically measures the growth on the base year of. What is the base year? So base year is the year from which we are comparing our growth. For example, if I am comparing the industrial growth for the year 2024, my base year or my year of reference would be 2011 and 12. And basically, this IIP is actually published monthly. Now, this index of industrial production can be further subdivided into index of core industries and index of non-core industries. And this news is specifically regarding this index of core industry. So out of the industrial output or out of the industrial sector, certain industries are considered core sectors. And which are the core sectors? So these would be the sectors which have an overbearing impact on other sectors also. So a very small example would be electricity sector. So if there is an increase in electricity production or there is a decrease in electricity production, all of the other sectors are impacted by any growth or decrease or any decline in the industry sectors. So such kind of industries are made part of core sector. So presently in the index of core industries, which is part of IIP, there are 8 core sectors. And when we measure 8 core sectors, we have a better idea on how our economy is performing, specifically in the manufacturing sector. So as I told you that agriculture and manufacturing and agriculture and services sector would not be part of it. It would be the manufacturing sector. And out of the manufacturing sector, the most important sector, which has the highest weightage in when it's come to weightage in IIP, is the refinery product sector. So your petroleum, your diesel making, your natural gas making, etc. would not natural gas, but petroleum and your diesel sector refinery would be part of refinery industry, refinery product industry. This is the first core sector of India. And second would be your electricity sector. Second core industry is your electricity sector. Third would be steel sector. Fourth is your coal sector. Fifth is your crude oil. So remember, look how important oil is. The refinery product industry is a separate core industry, and your crude oil industry is a separate industry in itself. Next would be natural gas. Seventh would be cement. And your last would be fertilizer industry. So once you will look at the list of the core industry, you will find out that rather than have a direct application, they might have direct application. They are actually part of many other industries. For example, when you look at steel industry, steel is going to be used to construct, I'll say, housing sector as well as your industrial sector. So steel is going to be used there. For making cars, also the steel is going to be used there. So by tracking the progress or growth in the steel industry, we would have a fair bit of idea how the other industries are going to get impacted by that. So these are some of the 8 core industries, and we have find out a good news that in the month of February there has been a 6.7% increase as compared to last month or previous. Now let's move to the next sector. So next news item. So next news item relates to your Agniveer scheme. So Agniveer or Agnipath scheme was a scheme launched by the government in the year 2022. Exactly in September 2022, it was announced. And what is so? It's a similar scheme to US's Tour of Duty. So what is the scheme? So this scheme is basically rather than recruiting personnel into the army and your armed forces directly, what we are doing is we are actually kind of uh, hiring people on contract basis for a period of 4 years. So rather than permanently inducting them into the army, we are at the first stage only inducting them for the first 4 years, where we would be providing them with 6 months of training and 3.5 years of deployment in the armed forces. So for 4 years, it would be a tenure of 4 years. For the 6 months, you would be given training, and for the next 3.5 years, you would be deployed in some region. And out of the total number of Agniveers, only 25% or maximum of 25% would be inducted into the permanent commission, which means they would become permanent employees of the armed forces, and then they would be eligible for the benefits which a permanent commission person gets. For example, a pension at the end of retirement and other perks which are given to an army personnel. So what happens to the people who are not inducted into the army after 4 years? So they would be given a Seva Nidhi amount. Amount is would be credited into their account. Amount would be credited. That would be known as Seva Nidhi amount, and that would be an amount of 11 lakh rupees after a service of 4 years. Moreover, the service is open for both male and female, and the age group is 7.5 to 21 years. So don't get confused. At some places, you will see it, the age group is 17.5 to 23. However, that was only for the first year. The present age criteria, eligibility criteria is for 17.5, age group of 17.5 to 21 years. So what this news is about? So Congress MP Kharge, Mallikarjun Kharge, who is the Congress president also, he has said that the government should apologize to youth for flawed Agniveer scheme. That the Agniveer scheme which they have bought was bought up in haste and it wasn't properly designed, and because of this, the youth has been the promises which have been made to the youth have not been fulfilled properly. So the government has replied that it is we have just said that we are going to we have launched this service as on a trial basis, and as soon as we find that there are certain shortcomings, we are very ready to remove it. For example, that the army has been asking that rather than inducting only 25%, we should grow it to 50% of the inductees. Okay, so that there would be because there is already a shortfall of men in the army, and by inducting 50%, it would be very beneficial for the army also. So that's it related to Agniveer. Now let's move to the next news item, which is regarding a UGC proposal to use NED, National Eligibility Test, for PhD admission. So you might know that usually a person after completing their 12th does a graduation, then he does a post graduation, and if he wants to do higher study, he can actually get a doctoral degree or a PhD. So usually, what was the criteria beforehand? Before this proposal was, yeah, which is currently the proposal is that when you want to do a PhD, you actually apply to a particular college or a higher education institution which is providing a PhD degree. Is providing you a PhD degree. So what you had to do is you had to give that individual college or higher education institution individual exam. So let's say if you want to apply for PhD in JNU, Jawaharlal Nehru University, which is the top university when it comes to doctoral admissions. So you have to give that JNU exams separately. And if you want to do your PhD from Ashoka University or some other private university, you have to give their exam, their individual exam. However, now the UGC has proposed that we are going to conduct one single examination, one nation, one examination. Like one nation, one election, the government is also promoting one nation, one examination for different kind of papers. For example, right now, if you want to get into an engineering stream, you have to just give one exam, JEE. There are two levels, mains and advanced, but you have to give only JEE if you want to get into engineering exams. And uh, earlier the types of exams, the state level exams, all of them now be removed, and only you have to give JEE to get into admission into any engineering college. Similarly, national eligibility test, which is actually an exam you give if you want to become an assistant professor in a university. So if you want to become a lecturer at the level of assistant professor in university or a college in India, then you have to clear this NET exam. And now what the UGC has proposed is that we are going to use the same exam, this NET exam qualification, as a marker if you want to get admission into PhD. And different colleges can use this NET score to allow. They can decide their cutoff on the basis of the NET score to finally give you admission in the NET examination or in a PhD course. So in this gives us an opportunity to discuss about UGC. So UGC stands for University Grants Commission, and its main job is to set standards. Main job is to set standards for higher educational institutions. It will set standards for higher education. This UGC is actually headquartered in New Delhi, and it has 6 regional offices also. Its present chairman, so UGC chairman, is N. Jagdish Kumar, who was earlier the chancellor, vice chancellor of JNU also, and that time there was certain controversy also. So M. Jagdish Kumar is the current chairman. And one important organization, NAAC, National Assessment and Accreditation Council, which is an autonomous body under the UGC. So it's an autonomous body under the UGC. And what it does is it assesses the quality of higher educational institutes, and it gives accreditation. Accreditation basically is recognition that this particular organization, that this particular college or university is fulfilling the minimum quality level which are required as per UGC. So these are some of the points which we are doing for you. Now let's move to the next news. So there is one foreign visitor who is actually visiting India right now, and that person is the Ukraine Finance Minister. So Ukraine Finance Minister Dmytro Kuleba, you don't have to remember the name. I'm just stating the name. So he's actually on a visit on India, and he has come to India to get India's support for Ukraine in the Russia-Ukraine war. As you know, that Russia and India have a long friendship. So Russia was one of the few countries which has always helped India in times of need, specifically when it comes to wartime. So starting from the 1947, your 1971 war, your 1975 war, and your 1998 Kargil war, it was a Russian government which was actually standing with India. So India has a long-lasting relationship with India. So this makes it very difficult that even if India believes that Russia has done something wrong by attacking Ukraine, it cannot directly support Ukraine. It has to kind of create a balance between Ukraine and Russia. However, so Ukraine finance minister has come to India to get India support, and here he has asked that India should become a participant in a peace summit. So peace summit is being organized by one of the countries. So if you will see 20 GK questions on your portal or the video which is uploaded on YouTube, there also a question has been asked: where is the peace summit is being held? So the country of Switzerland is actually going to organize a peace summit, and the finance minister has extended invitation to India to come and participate in this peace summit. If you may know that Russia actually attacked Ukraine a year ago, more than a year ago now, and actually it's 2 years now. Actually just 2 years were completed, and it was basically regarding two regions of Donetsk and Donbass, which are basically uh, Russian speakers or Russian populated regions of Ukraine, and it became one of the reasons that on which Russia attacked Ukraine. It said that people in Donetsk and Donbass, which are basically of Russian origin, do not get equal treatment in the Ukraine territory, and because of this, we as supporters of Russian speakers are going to attack Ukraine and get independence to these countries. Moreover, the one of the reasons why Russia attacked Ukraine was that Ukraine was moving towards west, and was trying to become part of NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is a security arrangement led by the USA. And Russia does not want that Ukraine, which is one of the largest, which is the largest European country and is adjacent to Russia, that it becomes part of the NATO organization, which would become a threat to the Russian sovereignty. So that's why also Russia also attacked. So these were some of the reasons why Ukraine finance minister has come to India. Now let's come to the next news. So next news is regarding one of the statements the Supreme Court made in a case. It stated that advisory boards have to consider if detention is needed in eyes of law. So it gives us an opportunity to go through preventive detention. So in the Constitution, under Article 22, certain safeguards are provided when it comes to preventive detention. So first we should understand what is preventive detention. So as a name suggests, there is something to be prevented. And what we are doing, we are detaining some person to prevent something. So the Constitution allows that the police or the government or authorities can actually detain a person. They can send a person to a jail as a preventive measure on the belief that that person or that group of person can cause an issue of law and order. So if the government has enough reason, a reasonable doubt that this person can cause a law and order issue or can cause public nuisance, then that person can be put in preventive detention. However, this power is misused a lot, because of which the Constitution itself, under Article 22, provides certain safeguards. For example, one of the safeguards is that preventive detention cannot be for more than 3 months. You have to provide reasons, and in that case, it cannot be more than 3 months unless an advisory board, headed by retired high court judge allows it, which means a kind of a safeguard has been provided that if the preventive detention is to extend above 3 months, it has to be advised. Then it is to be recommended by the advisory board. And what the court has said, that advisory have to consider if detention is needed in eyes of law, which means key advisory boards which are going to look at preventive detention should look at all the pros and cons. It should look at all the evidences which are being provided to show that the preventive detention is necessary, which means you have to make it show that it is necessitated, and by keeping the person out, there is an imminent threat to public law and order. If that cannot be proved, then the advisory board should avoid extending preventive detention, because otherwise the government is only going to use the advisory board as a rubber stamp, that we have provided preventive detention and we are very sure that advisory board is going to uphold my decision. However, the Supreme Court here cautioned the advisory boards that as guardian of fundamental rights, as guardian of rights of the person, when you are deciding on preventive detention, you should be very sure that only in extreme cases, when it becomes extremely necessary, only then you allow a preventive detention of a person. Now let's move to the next case, next news item, which is regarding a living will. This was recently in news again because there were certain guidelines which were changed when it comes to living. So first we should understand what is living will. So common cause versus Union of India. So common cause is an NGO, and there was a case, NGO versus Union of India, in 2018, wherein it said that although euthanasia or passive euthanasia is allowed in India, however, because there are no guidelines when passive euthanasia can be allowed, there is a requirement of clarity by the Supreme Court so that this right can be properly utilized. So let's understand what is euthanasia. So euthanasia, in other words, would mean right to die or right to assisted suicide. And what is this? So in India, a person, if he or she is in a permanent vegetative state, which means that person is not able to do his own day-to-day chores on his own. In that case, the court would allow, and if the medical board approves, he can be given passive euthanasia, which means that if he is or she is on a life support system, then that life support system can be taken out so that he can have a peaceful and he can have a peaceful death. So that passive euthanasia was allowed. However, one issue was that let's say I am in a passive euthanasia and I have not given any guidelines. My doctor does not know what do I want if I come in a permanent vegetative state. In this case, the petitioner argues that certain guidelines should be framed so that a person can draft a living will. Let's say I want, in case I come in a state of permanent vegetative state or I get in a lifelong coma, there the probability of my revival is close to 0%, that I cannot be revived back. I would be in a coma if I put up on a life support. So at that time, if that situation is arise and I want that in such case euthanasia should be given to me, a passive euthanasia should be applied to me, I can actually write a living will, and wherein I can mention this thing that in case in future I come in a permanent vegetative state, then it is advisable that you take away my life support system and allow me to die peacefully. So this is the concept of living. So what has happened is, so some people, some 30 doctors, nurses, etc., volunteers who understand this concept have come together and have signed our living wills. So all of them have drafted their own living will, and they have done it so that a message can be given to the society that there are many people who are not able to afford treatment. There are many people who are not able to afford a palliative care, or palliative care is basically when a person is in pain. So palliative care is given to him so that the pain can be reduced. So the people who are terminally ill should understand the provision of living will, and so that they can come out of such a miserable life and can have a peaceful death. So this article relates to that, and this gives us an opportunity to study something about passive euthanasia and the concept of living. Now let's move to the next headline. So next is one of the editorial, which is regarding easily provoked. So if you know that recently, Delhi's Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal, or AK, was actually sent into jail, into ED custody, and it deals with one of a liquor excise duty case, on which there was certain give and take. It is alleged that Aam Aadmi Party and its functionaries, including the Chief Minister, took money from those from the liquor companies so that those licenses could be given to those companies. And ED has actually taken action against Arvind Kejriwal under prevention of money laundering. However, when this action took place, and it because this action took place very near to the election, in between the election season, there were certain statements made by United States, Germany, and now United Nations has also made a statement. And when the personnel from these countries made a statement, the Indian government responded by calling out their ambassadors, by calling out their councils in the country, and they actually reprimanded them to not use such kind of language and called it interference in the sovereignty of the country. And it also cautioned them that if those countries are going to make such statement against India, then India would also be open to make such kinds of statements which could be treated as an attack on sovereignty of that nation. However, this article, if you will read this editorial, you will show here that it is titled Easily Provoked. And actually, the author is arguing, the editorial board is arguing here that by replying to the allegations or replying to the statements being by US, Germany, we are becoming easily provoked. And India should be confident. India should be confident of its own democratic record. That no matter what other countries say, we are confident that we are a democratic country and we are following rule of law. Rule of law, that irrespective of the status of person, everyone is equal in front of law, that we are following rule of law, and we have trust in our courts. We trust our judicial system, that it is going to, the criminal justice system is going to do justice to the person who is in front of the court. So these are some of the suggestions which has been provided by the editorial board to the government. Now let's move to the next news item, again from the editorial section. So there has been certain reports wherein we have the reporters have calculated what has been the internet freedom, the level of internet freedom in India in the last 10 years. And one striking observation is that in the last 10 years, when it's come to at the global level, the top country which has seen the most number of internet shutdown, it has been India. And in India, it is a state of Jammu and Kashmir which has seen the most number of internet shutdowns in the last 10 years. However, when it comes to last year, the most number of internet shutdown were actually in the state of Manipur, which took for which was a prolonged internet shutdown for 7 to 8 months. So these are some of the data points which has come up. As a summary, it has stated that internet freedom in India is actually very low or very at a very moderate stage, which means we do not have the same amount of internet freedom as is being seen in other developed and democratic countries, which means there is a long path for us when it comes to internet freedom. Now, next, very related to again to cyber security related to internet freedom. So there is one company, Cisco, which comes up with the cyber security readiness index. And what does it calculates is that how ready a company or how ready India as a country or private companies in India are if a cyber threat is come to a private company, how equipped they are or how ready they are to tackle it. And it has found a shocking revelation that only 4% of Indian companies or 4% of firms are equipped enough if a cyber threat comes up. Which means in 96% of the companies, Indian companies, in which your and my data is stored, my personal data is stored, most probably it would get leaked or be used in the dark web. Leaked and would be used or misused in the dark web also. So it has advised that that all the Indian firms should have a separate department for cyber security, and they should increase their budget also. At the same time, it has also advised the government to take certain actions so that these private companies are forced to improve their cyber security. Now, let's come to the next news item. So, next news item relates to your share market. So, if you know that in the share market, let's say you have bought a share of Reliance. So, let's say today you bought a Reliance share, and that Reliance share you bought for 100 rupees. And tomorrow you sold that share back at rupees 110. So usually this whole transaction would be shown in your account and the money would be transacted usually in T+1 or T+2, which means the day of the transaction plus 1 day or day of the transaction plus 2 days. However, now your national stock exchange and your Bombay stock exchange, which are the stock exchanges which list these shares, actually started a beta program or a beta version of this, and in which they are trying to do the settlement on the same day. So T+0 or same day settlement is soon going to become a reality when it's to share market, which means if you have done the transaction on today's date, by the end of that day, you will be able to see that transaction in your trading account also. So this is a new update. Now, let's come to the last news item for today, which is regarding Philippines and China's dispute. So if you may know, there on the south of China, there is a South China Sea. If I draw the map, if this is China, there are certain countries here, Japan, etc., and certain countries here. There is Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, etc., Laos, etc. And this is the South China Sea. And what China is, in historic maps of China, 9 dashes have been found. 9 dashes. And this is known as 9-dash line. And what China does is, it claims whole of the South China Sea, which is inside this 9-9 as part of the China or as a sovereign territory of China. So if you may know, there is United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea. As per it, up to 12 nautical miles. So distance in sea is measured in nautical miles. Up to 12 nautical miles, there is territorial sea. And up to 200 nautical miles, there is exclusive economic zone. But since China, and this region 9-dash line is beyond this 200 nautical miles. And if you know that, let's say there is Indonesia here, there is Malaysia here. These countries' exclusive economic zone is also traveling the same. There would be islands also nearby these, which are actually sovereign territory of these, which are actually right now in control of these islands of Philippines, Malaysia, etc. However, since China is claiming this 9-line on all the territory inside it, it is claiming these islands and these exclusive economic zones. And what problem these countries are facing is that the exclusive economic zone, which should be extending inside South China Sea up to here, China is claiming that their exclusive economic zone ends very near to, is only beyond the 9-line. And because of which many dispute has arisen. So let's study about South China Sea disputing countries. In the South China Sea disputing countries, you can keep China and Taiwan on the one side, because Taiwan, which China claims is part of China only, and Taiwan, which believes that it is the original China, both claims the same 9-9. And on the other side, you can keep other South China Sea states. It will be Brunei, Malaysia, Philippines, and Vietnam. So these are the South China Sea disputing countries. And two major island groups which are in dispute between these countries are, one is the Scarborough Shoal, one is the Scarborough Shoal. It's a group of islands, and other one is Spratly Islands. So when it's come to Spratly Island is actually disputed between whole of the South China Sea dispute, because Spratly Island is a group of islands, and there are many number of islands in the Spratly Island. However, the Scarborough Shoal is basically a dispute between China and Philippines. And one of the islands under Scarborough Shoal is known as Second Thomas Shoal. So Second Thomas Shoal is part of Scarborough Shoal, and it is a disputed territory between China and Philippines. And what happened is that the Chinese Coast Guard, which is actually the Coast Guard is basically responsible for taking care of the South China Sea of China. The Chinese Coast Guard actually disturbed and actually violated naval ships of Philippines. It actually tried to show, or it showed aggression against the naval ships of Philippines, because of which Philippines leader of Philippines president right now, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., has warned countermeasure against China. And Philippines, as you know, is one of the protected state of US. So USA, to keep some dominance in the South China Sea, actually supports Philippines so that it can become a counter to China. So USA has already stated that if any attack is done on Philippines sovereignty, US is going to directly get involved in such kind of dispute, because of which China also does not directly get involved. However, it has crossed the line by directly attacking naval ships or directly threatening naval ships of Philippines, because of which a warning has come from the highest level of the Philippines leadership also. So, class, thank you for today's session. That's it from my side. I hope to see you in the next session. Thank you and have a very nice day.